Hello everyone, this is Hunter Dusa. I play clarinet and I'm originally from Belchertown, Massachusetts, but I am currently a student at Baldwin Wallace University Conservatory of Music in Bree, Ohio. Um, I'm going to be a second year JC next year at Laurel Music Camp, and I have been attending since the summer after my sophomore year of high school, so for 3 years. And I will be commentating on the two Rose Etudes, number 5 and number 18, for the CMEA regional auditions. We're going to talk about Etude number 5, Adagio con Espressione. So, a lot of people think that the slow etude of the, slow and fast etude couple that most auditions are, is the easier of the two. And I would have to disagree because it is much harder to keep a steady, slow tempo than it is a fast one. So what you're going to want to do is learn how to internalize that quarter note equals 50, because it is hard for us musicians and just people in general to keep a steady beat that's usually slower than your own heartbeat. So what you're going to want to do when you first look at this is you're going to take out a metronome app, set it to quarter note equals 50, and just let yourself kind of internalize that. Like maybe sway your body to it. Maybe whatever floats your boat. Because what you don't want to do is learn it too fast. And what you don't want to do is when eventually you get off the metronome, is end up at the end being at quarter note equals 70 when you started at quarter note equals 50. Because that's not good. And of course you're not going to stay like steady quarter note equals 50 throughout the whole thing. Obviously there's going to be some pull and push and but if you don't have that internalized quarter note equals 50 and your adjudicators can't see that you know where the beat is all the time, then it's not going to be as great as an audition as if you had that internalized. So, and especially with all these runs and different forms of subdivision, it's going to be very easy to speed up. So make sure you internalize that. Second of all, is the expression. And of course, this is an etude, and a lot of people think, oh, etudes, you don't have to play with a lot of expression. But if you're going to want to win over the adjudicators, you're going to have to put a little something into it. So what I like to do sometimes, I like to put maybe slight ritordandos at the end of phrases, or I'll emphasize the peak of a crescendo by broadening the tempo just a little bit. You kind of got to find what you like the most, because it's not going to be the same for everyone. And yeah. And then lastly, for this etude, is your breathing roadmap. So with every slow etude I learn, it's always about knowing where to breathe and where not to breathe. So what I recommend is actually singing it to yourself and finding where it makes sense for you to breathe while you're singing. Because normally when we're singing, we wouldn't breathe at an awkward place. Whereas when we're playing our instrument, it's not as obvious. So what I'd recommend is, maybe singing through the first couple lines and seeing to yourself where you want to breathe and where you're like, oh, I should not breathe there. And make sure you mark in your parts where you're going to breathe, because you don't want to get to the audition and suddenly forget where you're going to breathe, because that won't be very fun. What you don't want to do is run out of air at the end of a phrase. So make sure you plan that out accordingly. And of course, if you have smaller lungs, you're going to have to take more breaths. If you don't, you're going to have to take less. You kind of have to figure that out for yourself. So just do that, and you'll have a successful audition. We're going to talk about etude number 18. So, of course, this is the fast etude in the pair of the slow and fast etudes. And a lot of people, when they look at fast etudes, they go, oh my god, so many notes at such a fast tempo. But the most important thing is that you play this at a tempo where you can be the most successful, not at the tempo that it has to be at. So some people are going to be able to play it at the quarter note or dotted quarter equals 80, and you know what? Good for them. But just because they can play it at the quarter note, dotted quarter equals 80, doesn't mean they're going to have a successful audition. A successful audition will be you playing it and it sounds effortless. So if you're playing it at dotted quarter equals 80, but it sounds like you're really tense and you're kind of clanking through all the notes, it sacrifices a lot more than playing it at, say, dotted quarter equals 60, and you get all the notes and it sounds great. So what you're gonna want to do first is start slow. So when I learned this, I started at dotted quarter equals 30 to just get the notes in my hand, you know? And then eventually you can bump it up to where you want it to be. And it's okay if you don't get it to the fastest tempo, as long as you get it to a tempo where you can play all the correct notes and you can add in stuff like phrasing and dynamics and articulation. It won't matter if it's not at tempo. So you'll have to find that tempo for yourself. And then I'd like to call attention to measure 40, where it's can get a little bit tricky if you just dive into it. And a lot of people have trouble with it because it can get a little tense in the fingers. And so what I like to do is it has E flat, and so obviously you have to play that next C on the left. And then it goes G. And what I like to do is switch to C on the right. Because, at least for me, my right hand is a lot more flexible than my left hand. And I know if I play those C's, that I can, obviously, because when it's E flat, you're going to have to play C on this side. But for the rest of the C's, if I can play them with my right hand, it will sound less clanky, less tense, it'll flow better, and that's generally a truth for most musicians, is that their right hand is more more flexible than their left hand. I mean, unless you're left-handed, maybe that's not true, but at least for me, I like to do E flat, C, G, C, G flat, C, F, C, F flat, C on this side, because then you have to play E flat, C, D. And of course, even if it still sounds a little clinky, it's not the end of the world to slow down a little bit in those measures, because they are hard. And it's more important to be able to play the right notes than to just speed through it and absolutely trash it. So doing that will be a lot better. And then just add some fun to it. If you think about it, these adjudicators are going to be hearing this etude all day long. And to stand out, you're going to have to add a little bit of what you want to bring to the table. So there's not many dynamics written in this. So you can add some yourself, add some phrases, add some little pull and flow, but obviously not at the expense of a good tempo. Yeah. And also, don't forget to do the meno mosso at measure 17. You don't want to do those at the same tempo as the surrounding sections. So, good luck. Well, everyone, I'm Hunter Duso, and good luck on all of your audition endeavors. And I can't wait to hopefully be back in person at Laurel Music Camp next year to see everyone and have some awesome music making. And just remember, slow and steady is always better than fast and messy. Goodbye, everyone.